Hi, I'm Rick Rheins, the rabbi at Temple Sinai in Denver, Colorado. This week's Torah portion is Terumah. The Shabbat is Shabbat Zachor. Terumah comes from the 25th chapter of the book of Exodus on, and it talks about the building of the tabernacle, the first place of worship that will be for the children of Israel first in the desert, and ultimately will be the guide plan for the building of the temples in Jerusalem, the first temple, and then of course the second temple. We also have Shabbat Zachor. Now, Shabbat Zachor is always the Sabbath right before the festival of Purim. Purim this year is this coming Thursday evening. And on Shabbat Zachor, we read another Torah portion, a little 3-verse section from the 25th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. And in it, it says, Zachor et asher asa Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you when you were coming out of Egypt. And Amalek, this terrorist tribe of bandits, attacked the Israelites as they were coming out, but it didn't attack the strong and the well fortified. It attacked rather those who were the stragglers at the end of the caravan, the weak, the infirm, the old, the mothers with their babies, the most vulnerable in society. And so the Torah says, Zachor et asher asa. Remember what they did. And then it concludes, Lo tishkach. Don't forget. Both remembering and not forgetting that there's a plague of some racism, of bigotry, of anti-Semitism, that there are those people who are indulging in the hatred that attacks the most vulnerable in society, that plagues society. Why is this portion read right before Purim? Well, the tradition says that Amalek was the ancestor of Haman. Haman, of course, was that person who in Persia wanted to kill all the Jews of Persia and throughout the realm. Jews have found throughout our history the plague of certain anti-Semites in our own day as well. It's not just ancient history, which is why Zachor, we remember, velo tishkach, and we don't forget that there are plagues going on in this world. Now, it just naturally comes back into the conversation that we've been dealing with over the last 12 months, and that is the plague of the COVID virus. When is that going to go away? And then you start to think, will we one day forget the lessons that we've been learning and are learning about dealing with a plague, about our unpreparedness to deal with an international plague that killed so many people? Just so happened in a Scientific American issue just a couple of months ago, there was a reference to the forgetting of the pandemic that killed between 50 and 100 million people worldwide. It was the flu of 1918. And you would think that there would be volumes and volumes written about it. But the researchers from Scientific American, they interviewed these other sociologists and historians, they were surprised to learn how little was written and conveyed from generation to generation about these plagues. Now, once in a while it'll come back because there will be another disease that comes out, or another plague that comes out, or some kind of grand illness, and people make reference to it, and it'll be a little article in the newspaper. But for the most part, it's forgotten, which brings us back to where we are. What will be remembered about the COVID-19 plague of 2020 and now in 2021? We're still in that battle against it. What lessons will we remember, and what will we forget? Now, how can I relate any of that to the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle? So I'm glad you asked. In the Talmud, in Megillah 13b, both Rava and Resh Lakish said, God created the cure for a plague before there is a plague, that there is a way to get through a plague, whether it's social or physical, an illness. There is some cure for us that we can avail ourselves of. God's created it for us. We just need to avail ourselves of it and be prepared. The building of the Mishkan was one way of saying to the children of Israel, and then ultimately to everyone, God is in our midst. And indeed it says, build for me this Mishkan, build for me this place. I will dwell in your midst. I will be there for you in times when you feel alone. There is a meaning, there is a purpose for you, even during the times when you feel under siege from so many different battles. There is a sanctuary for us. Now, how can I say that? I'm speaking to you on a camera, and we're not in a sanctuary. We're not in our chapel. For goodness sakes, we've been away from each other for more than a year. So how can I be talking about coming back into this place where God will be dwelling among us? And besides which, doesn't God dwell everywhere? Indeed, God does dwell everywhere. But there's also an importance of coming together for that collective memory, not selective memory where I only choose certain things, but a collective memory, learning the lessons from the past, learning that there is an Amalek, learning that there was a Haman, learning that there are individuals out there in our day as well who are filled with rage and bigotry and anti-Semitism and racism. We have to remember that, velo tishkach, and not to forget. We have to remember that together we have found the solution to it, the cure for that hatred, which is to build bonds of love, to renew a sense of hope, to come together and to recall the strength that we have in the collective. We can have that virtually. We'll put up with this for whatever months is necessary still. We can do that virtually, but there'll come a time soon where we can physically gather together, where we'll be able to remember God is in our midst, that there is hope, that there is purpose. And that for us is the lesson, lo tishkach, not to forget, not to allow the overwhelming sense of a plague, whether it's a bully, a bigot, an anti-Semite, a racist, or of a virus that seems to plague us. Just like the Scientific American said, you know what? We sometimes want to forget. We won't recall all of the lessons in the past, and that's going to rob us of some chance to prepare, to be stronger for whatever will happen in the future. So on this Shabbat, the Shabbat of remembrance, let us recall the strength we gain from each other. Let us recall that there are places where we can feel God's presence. And let us recall that goodness and hope is in all of our life, as long as lo tishkach, as we don't forget. Amen.